we're just listening to something. About 20 seconds.
The time right now is 31 minutes past the hour, and joining me live in the studio, as it is a Thursday morning, is film critic Howard Elias. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we have 3 films to talk about. It's Kino time again.
Yeah, well, I'm going to leave that one to the last because that's starting next week. But the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm going to talk about the opening night film today because it's next Thursday and it always sells out early. So I want to give people a chance if its film sounds interesting, and I hope I make it sound interesting, they'll go out and buy a ticket. But let's talk about the 2 films that are opening today. But even before I talk about that, there's 2 other things I want to talk about. Number one is Chinese actress Fan Bingbing has emerged from the shadows. Did you hear about this whole business with Fan Bingbing? You know, she was on the run or in hiding for tax evasion. I thought she fled China. I honestly thought she would show up a few months later in Hollywood or something, but it turns out she's still in China, and she's going to pay the however much it is. It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. So, but I think, you know what, I was thinking about this yesterday. Had she stayed on the run, her Hollywood career would have been over because no Hollywood agent would have cast her, because then the film would have been banned in China. So maybe this was a consideration. I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the big film that's opening today is Venom, starring Tom Hardy. It's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's not made by Disney. It's made by Sony. There's a whole business about which characters belong to Disney and which characters belong to Sony, and this is a Sony one. And I haven't seen it because it's opening today, and but apparently it's getting very bad reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I've seen the trailer.
I haven't seen the trailer. I was thinking, maybe I'll go see it tomorrow morning or something, but I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so now the 2 other films that are opening today. The first one I'll talk about is called A Simple Favor, starring Anna Kendrick from Pitch Perfect, those 3 films which I have never seen and have no intention of seeing. Have you seen them?
No.
She's been in a few films. She's a singer and comedian and quite good. And Blake Lively, who's Mrs. Ryan Reynolds, one of the 2 Canadian Ryans. And who knew she could do comedy? But she can, apparently.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I never imagined.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting film. It's a mashup. It's a comedy, crime, drama, thriller, neo-noir mashup. It's got it all.
But was it good?
Well, yeah, for the most part, yeah, actually, yeah. So the whole premise is, how well do you know your best friend?
Oh.
And for young mom Stephanie Smothers, who's Anna Kendrick's character, when it comes to her best friend, Emily Nelson, played by Blake Lively, she doesn't know her very well, it seems. Now, granted, the 2 women have only known each other for a few weeks. So,
well, how could you be best friend after only a few weeks? I mean, if you're talking about years, you know your best friend.
Right. Well, the issue is Stephanie, Anna Kendrick's character, is sort of needy, you know, and she latches on to Emily Nelson. Now, granted, you know, they've only known each other for a few weeks. Their 2 boys are in the same grade 1 class at school, and they seem to, you know, get along well together. They're like best friends. The boys are friends. The boys are real friends. But the 2 women really couldn't be more different. Stephanie is the type of school mom that drives all the other parents crazy with her perfection and her eagerness, you know. You know the type. She has her own vlog, you know, video vlog.
Right? Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah, they're called vlog, V-L-O-G.
Okay.
I guess I have a vlog, right? Because this is we're broadcasting right now on Facebook Live, which goes on my blog. So she has her on a vlog where she offers recipes and crafts to moms just like her. And she's developed a bit of a following, but nothing that's going to make her into the next YouTube lifestyle star anytime soon. Now, Emily, on the other hand, is wealthy. She's a high-powered PR director at a fashion house run by the pretentious Dennis Nylund, played to perfection by Rupert Friend, who is probably best known for his stint in TV's Homeland. He was Peter Quinn.
Oh, right.
Right, so you know who he is.
Yep.
British guy who does a great American accent.
Mm-hmm.
And she's married to Sean Townsend, who's played by Henry Golding, who we just saw a couple of weeks ago in Crazy Rich Asians. And he is an English professor and a published writer. Now, one day when Sean, the husband, is in England looking after his mother who's in the hospital, Emily calls Stephanie to tell her she has an emergency at work, and she wonders if Stephanie would do a simple favor, hence the title. Could she look after...
That favor isn't so simple, is
well,
it?
no, actually it is. She says, could you look after my little boy until dinner time? Which is, and Stephanie, of course, she readily agrees because that's Stephanie, but, it's no big deal because her kids play well together. So she agrees. However, 2 days later, when she hasn't come to pick up the kid and she hasn't returned any of Stephanie's calls, Stephanie gets a little worried, and that sets the wheels in motion for Stephanie. Oh, I wrote Emily in my notes, but for Stephanie to try to solve the mysterious disappearance of her new best friend. Right, so that's where we start getting into the mystery thriller film noir business. Now, for the most part, this is a fun film. It's a funny film. It's got this wacky mixture of all these elements that I've mentioned. And a number of pundits have called both this film and the 2017 novel of the same name by Darcy Bell, they've called it Gone Girl on steroids. And I'd say that's a pretty accurate description because, I'd say the first, because it's about a 2-hour movie, I'd say the first hour and 15 minutes, it is really, yeah, for sure. And then it sort of goes off the rails a little bit, which I'll talk about in a bit. Now, Kendrick, who seems to be making a career out of portraying kooky but lovable characters. She's quite at home with this material, but it's really Lively who's just fabulous with this comedic turn. I mean, she plays this femme fatale just to perfection, and I think she does a great job. Now, clearly her husband must have known she's got a penchant for comedy. I don't think anybody else knew until now. So good for her.
Well,
now,
she got it from him.
Maybe she got it from him. Well, he knows something that we didn't know until now. So as I said, unfortunately, in the third act, the film really goes off the rails. It starts getting very dark, starts getting a little implausible, and it struggles to find this balance of humor and drama that existed in the first act. It sort of claws its way back, but it doesn't quite get there, not as good. So the first half of the film is better than the second half. And it seems that the screenwriter, Jessica Sharzer, who, by the way, I brought her very first film to Hong Kong back in 2002. And if you don't believe me, look her up on Internet Movie Database and you'll know.
And what was that film, briefly?
I think it was called Nomi's Bat Mitzvah. It was about a 12-year-old girl, if I remember correctly. She didn't want to have a bat mitzvah. Mm-hmm. That's all I remember. I can't remember what it's about. Okay. But it was on VHS. You didn't have DVDs back in 2002.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyhow, she wrote the screenplay, but from what I understand, the source material has the same problem, that it gets very dark and implausible, and doesn't. The second half of the book isn't as good as the first half of the book. So it seems like she wasn't able to improve upon what she was given, which is a little sad. But I'd say, the film does have a really good, really strong supporting cast as well. I think Henry Golding, whose Hollywood career seems to be taking off, he's very good as Emily's husband. Although he's got I think he's underused. I would have liked to have seen more of him in this movie, but what he has is good. He's currently working on a new film with the same director, Paul Feig, on a romantic comedy called Last Christmas, starring him and Emilia Clarke from TV's Game of Thrones. And I think it'll be out next December. I don't think it'll be ready by this December. So called Last Christmas. Now Rupert Friend, as I said, he plays this clothing designer, very pretentious. He is wonderful. He's got this very small part. He just does it straight out of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, that sort of thing. Very bitchy. He's really good. And it's such a departure from this Peter Quinn character. So great for him. And also enjoyable to watch, but underused, is Broadway actor and singer Andrew Rannells. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
I've seen him a few times on Late Night with the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He's very, very funny, and here he's got some good lines, but he's been held back and which is a shame because I think he's really a wonderful comedic actor. So all in all, I say this is a good film. It's not a great film. It's got a lot going for it than its shortcomings. So I give it a thumbs up. Um, it's good entertainment. It's not deep. It's not Gone Girl, but it's fun. It's safe, and check it out. So I'd say, yeah, I liked it. Didn't love it, but I liked it.
Okay.
All right.
Did you love Loving Pablo?
Oh God, no. Do you know anything about it?
No.
Okay. This is a film. It stars a husband and wife, Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz, and it's based on actual events detailed in the memoir Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar by Colombian journalist and TV personality Virginia Vallejo, who's Penelope Cruz's character. And she had an affair, a love affair, with the Colombian drug kingpin Pablo Escobar from 1983 to 1987. So she details this relationship and the aftermath in this book. So it's at the beginning of their relationship that Escobar, who was at the time the head of the Medellin drug cartel, he was beginning to feed America's, I guess, insatiable hunger for cocaine. And this activity earned him an estimated $21 billion a year at the height of his activity. So he was, I think for a while there, he was probably one of the richest men in the world, thanks to drug smuggling. So, but interesting, according to her, he wasn't satisfied with being rich beyond belief. According to Vallejo, what he really wanted was respect. And he tried to get that first by buying off politicians on both sides of the political divide. He didn't care who he bought off. He just wanted, I think he was worried about being extradited to the States. So he was hoping he'll just buy everybody off. And, when the vote should come up in the Senate or the Congress or whatever they have in Colombia, he would have enough people in his pocket that they would quash that. And when that didn't work, he decided to run for office himself, and he actually won. Which I didn't know about, but I mean, we can say one with air quotes around it because, of course, he bought votes as well. He just paid everybody off until everybody voted for him. So interesting. So as much as he was a thorn in the side of the Colombian government and judiciary, and they were under tremendous pressure from the United States to extradite him, and or at least curtail his smuggling activities, his drug activities, and they were unable to do so for any length of time because he had bought them all off, and anybody who didn't buy off, he just killed. He paid to kill them. What he was doing was the young men who were living in the slums of Medellin, he was paying them money to become hitmen. And they were doing it because they were broke. For them it was a job. And so that began this whole sort of episode in Colombia of killing government officials, killing policemen, killing judge, anybody who stood in his way, he just killed. And it was a pretty desperate time. I actually know somebody who worked for him. She lived here for a few years. So she fled him and fled his business, went to Australia, and applied for asylum, political asylum, I guess. Yeah, I guess asylum, applied for asylum. Yeah, and then she lived here for a few years. Anyhow, now as far as Vallejo is concerned, she didn't mind all the attention and money that Escobar was lavishing on her. She had no intention of forcing him to leave his wife and 2 kids as long as the gravy train kept stopping at her front door, which it did with quite frequency. But when it didn't, when it stopped and her life became at risk, that's when she decided to go to the Drug Enforcement Agency and Agent Shepard, played by Peter Sarsgaard in this film, to seek protection from him and his men in exchange for information on his whereabouts. So interesting.
And
now,
how long did she live?
Well, she's still alive. No, she's living in America, still alive. She's under protection in America, probably still, I would imagine. Now, Cruz, as Vallejo, she narrates this story. So she does this voiceover throughout the whole thing. She provides the audience with mildly interesting details about Escobar and their relationship. but I think what it really was a device to keep the film to just about 2 hours. Otherwise, it would have been a very long film. So, unfortunately, most of the time, this film is pretty boring. Plenty of people get gunned down or chopped up or sawed up or whatever, but it's done with very little drama and quite bluntly, it's done on the cheap. There's one scene where a helicopter crashes, but we don't see it. We see it in the reaction of a character whose name we don't even know. We've sort of been tangentially introduced to her, and we see her reaction as the helicopter crashes off screen, which was rather disappointing. I want to see, blood. I want to see, you know. So for me, the blame lies with the writer director Fernando Leon de Aronoa, who did A Perfect Day, which I reviewed last year. That was a pretty good film, but this one's not so good. The story is just we don't really care about either of these people. And I think if Scorsese or Tarantino, if Tarantino did this film, this would be a very different film for sure.
Yeah,
But
I can imagine.
but even Scorsese, because it's very similar to Goodfellas. It's a
Yeah.
Colombian version of Goodfellas. They would have made this into an exciting film. This film just really has no excitement. And to compound the problems, it's hard to feel any empathy for Vallejo because she was an opportunist, she is an opportunist who knew darn well who Escobar was and what he was up to very early on in her relationship. And as long as he kept her in the style to which she had become accustomed, she didn't care, right? Until it affected her own well-being. So, how do you feel any empathy or sympathy for somebody like that?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is not a great film. I'd say save it for when you're on an airplane and you have 2 hours to kill. Or maybe kill is a bad choice of word here. So,
Whatever happened to him?
oh, he's dead.
Oh.
That's not a spoiler. You can Google that one. Yeah, no, he's dead.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last film I'm going to talk about is the German film. As I said, it's the opening night for this year's Kino 18, which is the German language film festival organized by the Goethe Institute Hong Kong. This year, they're going to have 10 films, 10 new and award-winning films from Germany and Switzerland. Usually they don't, they just do Germany, but I guess there must be some good Swiss films. I haven't seen all the films, so I don't know. So there's 10 films, and it's taking place both here and in Macau. So they'll give you the website details at the end. Now, as is the case every year, the films depict thought-provoking and highly relevant stories about rebellion, courage, love and doubt, yearning and awakening. And I'd say this year, the opening night film certainly falls into that. So the film that opens is called The Silent Revolution. Should I dare to try the German? Because it's got like these 14-letter words. Das Schweigende Klassenzimmer. How's that? Das Schweigende Klassenzimmer. The Germans right now are all bristling with my pronunciation. Now, the story is based on true events that took place in East Germany in 1956. It's the story of a group of high school students who decide to hold 2 minutes of silence during their class in solidarity with the people of Hungary, who had just wrested control of their country away from their Russian masters. It's a true story. So the story goes, it's early days in the socialist paradise of the Deutsche Democratic Republic, the DDR or the GDR in English. And in many ways, the small city of Stalinstadt, which today is called Eisenhüttenstadt, which is located on the Polish border about 120 kilometers southeast of Berlin. It looks the part of this socialist paradise. It was built, this is true, the city was built just after the war, and it's very clean and orderly, and it provides job opportunities in the nearby steel mill for its residents and good schools for the children. Now, in real life, it didn't take place in Stalinstadt. It took place in another town, even closer to Berlin. So I don't know why. Maybe for filming, maybe they chose Stalinstadt. I don't know. So anyhow, but Stalinstadt really does exist, or did exist back then. Now, now underneath this veneer of perfection, let's call it, lies a government apparatus where information is tightly controlled, and dissent is quickly stifled. Now, Theo and Kurt are two high school students. They're just months away from graduation, but their minds are on other matters. One day, they take a train to the west. Now, this is 1956, so it's 5 years before the Wall was built, and people could go from east to west. So in 1961, that stopped. So back then they could go. So they went to the west, they went to Berlin to catch the latest West German film at the cinema. But it isn't the opportunity to see the actress's breasts that gets them excited. It's the newsreel before the film that does that. And it details reports of the Hungarian uprising that's taking place a few hundred miles away. Now, the boys return home and they tell their classmates the news that their own government has shielded it from them. And the group decides to take a vote, because it's very democratic, it's Democratic Republic, and they decide to stage a silent protest in class. But when news of their stunt reaches the national education minister, played by Burkhard Klausner, who was in The People versus Fritz Bauer, good film, by the way, same director, school superintendent Kessler is dispatched to the school to find out who was behind this act of defiance and come down so hard on the group's ringleader that it will never happen in the GDR ever again. Now, if this story sounds familiar to us in Hong Kong, I would say you're not wrong here, because we have a few things happening. We have our government's attempts to implement a national education curriculum in the school. I'm not saying it's good or bad. And of course, the recent banning of the Hong Kong National Party. So, what? Some people may argue that was 1956 and this is 2018, or that was East Germany and this is China. But the parallels are disturbingly similar. And even the story's dialogue, epilogue, which is true, is identical to what we're seeing in Hong Kong today. And I won't reveal what the epilogue is. Now, director Laus Kraume does a good job. He brings out fine performances from this fairly unknown cast of young actors. I haven't seen any of them in movies, but I guess if you know your German TV and small films, you would know them. But unfortunately, he does get a bit heavy-handed with the Christian imagery, especially during a pivotal scene involving one student who learns of his betrayal by both the state and his family. So I thought, that scene really was a bit over the top. But even so, I'd say the Silent Revolution offers an important history lesson on what can happen when people dare to aspire to be free thinkers. So once again, I'd say the people at the Goethe Institute have picked a winning film to open their film festival. It's thought-provoking and it's sure to spark conversation afterwards. So check it out. So the festival, Kino 18, it runs here and in Macau from October 11th, next Thursday, to the 21st. More information is on the Goethe Institute website. That's www.goethe.de/Hong Kong, one word, /Kino 18, Kino 18, or just type Hong Kong.
You just Google it.
Yeah, type Hong Kong Kino 18, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And opening nights at the Hong Kong Arts Center in Wan Chai, I'll be there. So if you're there, come up and say hello.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.